Welcome to SportsBeat KC, the Kansas City Star's daily sports podcast. It's Monday, April 27th, and I'm Blair Kirchhoff. The Chiefs' final pick of the 2020 draft is in, and so were the grades. Nationally, the Chiefs' draft wasn't seen as anything special, B's and C's, I guess, for a collective grade. But locally, they made the honor roll. Chiefs beat writer Herbie Teope is here to explain his grades for all 6 picks, 5 of which received an A or an A-. After a break, we will patch into the Brett Veach post-draft press conference and hear what the Chiefs general manager had to say about the weekend. But first, here's Herbie.
Herbie Teope is with us, fresh off the NFL draft. Long weekend for everybody, but they always are. But first of all, I thought it was great that we had the draft. You know, the NFL went ahead with it, didn't postpone it, didn't suspend it. They went ahead with it, and I thought from a TV production standpoint, it turned out pretty well.
Yeah, kudos to the NFL, kudos to the Chiefs PR folks, kudos to everyone involved in this, because we live in unprecedented times, and this draft seemed about as normal as could be. Granted, we were all working out of our homes, we weren't in the media room, but it just seemed normal, and I think the country needed that.
Yeah, I agree. All right, without further ado, let's get right into the draft, a little bit of a recap and your grade. We spent Thursday through Saturday on the draft, and you spent Sunday kind of grading it out, and you gave the Chiefs pretty high marks all across the board. And let's just start by asking you what goes into your grading assessment, and how does it differ than, say, a national pundit?
Well, I think, like, for the national folks, people need to remember that there's a huge difference between what they do and what we, my colleagues at the Kansas City Star, which includes you, obviously, Sam McDowell, Sam Millinger, and Vahe, we are around this team all the time. You know, how we view the team with our finger on the pulse is going to be completely different from those outside. And, I distinctly remember in the days leading up to the draft, there was a lot of grumblings out there. The Chiefs are going to trade for Leonard Fournette, and I'm like, nah, that's not happening. You know, it's just because that just didn't fit, and I think that's the biggest difference you see here. For me, when I grade a draft, and I want listeners and our reader base to understand something here. Most NFL general managers will take 3 to 4 years to evaluate their draft class before they assign their own grades. For me, I'm grading a draft based on the players they got. And the Chiefs didn't have that many holes. Let's get that out of the way. They're returning 20 of 22 starters from last year's Super Bowl winning team. But in my opinion, they came out of this draft with 3 players who could start immediately. And that's just unheard of for a team that won the Super Bowl and is picking late in the draft. I thought the Chiefs hit a home run. I thought they really did.
So you see 3 guys, and I'm assuming that you are talking about the first 3 selections of the Chiefs. You're thinking that at some point in year 1, these guys can move into the starting lineup and be contributors for the Chiefs.
Absolutely, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire, their first-round draft pick, the second-round draft pick, Willie Gay, immediate type starters. Lucas Niang.
Lucas.
Yep, and he's another guy who's very intriguing. They got extremely good value on this guy in the 3rd round, and he's someone who can start in the interior as well as outside. And I just thought they nailed it. They really nailed it through the first 2 days.
Well, you gave you graded each pick, and you gave A's to Edwards-Helaire and to Willie Gay Jr. and an A- to Lucas Niang, so it doesn't get much better than that. So I guess that's what you're referring to when, if you see potential starters from a draft pick, then I don't see how you couldn't give that pick an A, especially if they're coming in to start on a team that's just won the Super Bowl. That means that these guys are identified as, I think the Chiefs, correct me if I'm wrong, and I absolutely could be, but they took some dings nationally because they didn't take a corner with their first pick, and that was sort of identified as a need. But they took a running back who is a weapon for the offense, and they took a linebacker with the second pick, and Willie Gay, who, if there was sort of an obvious need for this defense, it was covering backs out of the backfield, and that's sort of what Willie Gay is all about. And the fact that they drafted a tackle in the third round, and then Brett Veach turns around and tells us he's going to start at guard, which is where we think that the need is. It's on the interior of the offensive line, not outside at tackle. I think that's an example of what you're saying, that people who cover the team on a daily basis just know it better than those who had identified needs and then graded the Chiefs based on not drafting those needs.
Yeah, absolutely. And they filled it. They filled the cornerback position, and we'll get to that in a second here. But the running back position, Edwards-Helaire, Andy Reid's offense loves dynamic backs with a versatile skill set. And with Edwards-Helaire, just completely ignore he's 5'7". He's packed powerfully, 207 pounds. LSU, versatile kind of guy. Joe Burrows, I remember reading a quote that, all the attention was on him, but without Edwards-Helaire, does he rack up those yardage in the passing game? Because Edwards-Helaire certainly helped out there. Think about this: Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill, Sammy Watkins, Mecole Hardman, DeMarcus Robinson, and of course you got Patrick Mahomes back there. Now you throw out a guy who's a matchup nightmare for defenses in Edwards-Helaire. This is a pick your poison type deal for defenses. Who are you going to lock on? They just simply can't. And the thing that jumped out to me the most about that pick is when the Chiefs took to Twitter and they posted a tweet of the video of Edwards-Helaire getting the phone call from the Chiefs saying, "Hey, you're our pick." Andy Reid tells them, "Hey, I asked Mahomes, I asked Patrick, who does he want?" Brett Veach says the same thing. "I asked Patrick Mahomes, who does he want?" Mahomes replied back, "Clyde." Hey, if Mahomes wants him, who are we to judge this pick?
Right. The other thing that stood out to me was just in reading the profile, he's great with, obviously great out of the backfield, 55 receptions last year. That's an absolute must. In fact, they split him out wide at times at LSU. And he doesn't drop. I think in his career, 68, maybe last season, 68 targets, 3 drops, and ball security is a strength, which is not the case with DeAndre Swift and Jonathan Taylor. I could see where just a little bit of fumbleitis would be enough to scare Andy Reid away. So okay, well let's switch quickly to Willie Gay and what's his great strength? What do you think he brings?
4.46 speed.
Yeah.
Look, when you got Damian Williams and Anthony Hitchens as your starting linebackers, they're great linebackers. Don't get me wrong there, but they had a clear need for a linebacker who could go sideline to sideline with great speed, great instinct, great playmaking ability, a hard hitter, and Willie Gay fit that need. I was obviously, as most people know, I was pounding the table, get Zach Bond. But you know what? I'm not gonna ding this pick here because Gay is a pretty darn good player himself. Yes, he comes with red flags from college. We wrote about that on draft night. Andy Reid addressed it. Brett Veach addressed it. And Gay addressed it as well. We're talking about academic issues. He got in a fight with his quarterback. But the Chiefs did their due diligence on this guy, and they felt pretty comfortable taking him. And I think, who are we now? Brett Veach has built a Super Bowl roster. I think he deserves a pass at least this maybe 1 or 2 years. Then we can start going back. What are we doing here? But I love the pick. 6'2", a solid 240 pounds, and again that speed, 4.46 speed, and Steve Spagnuolo's scheme where he gets the most out of those linebackers. I think this is a home run pick, and yes, I gave him an A.
Yeah, and I think also I think the Chiefs locker room can help bring around any player who maybe needs to be brought around, right? The Frank Clarks, the Tyrann Matthews, there is great leadership in that locker room. So third round pick, Lucas Niang, the tackle from TCU. I think the story that stood out was the game that he had against Ohio State, not this past season, but in 2018, where he had to block both Nick Bosa and Chase Young, and it was Chase Young who said after the after the game. Or no, he said, I think he must have said at the combine when he was asked if any offensive tackle had stood out to him in his career. He didn't identify Lucas Niang by name, but said, yeah, that TCU tackle that was blocking me that night, he remembered him. And the Chiefs use that. But we think he is he's not going to be a reserve tackle, but you see him as his path is as a guard. Is that right?
Yeah, and then Brett Veach also said the same thing after that pick, where he said he could see him starting off at the guard position, but the Chiefs had a clear eye to the future here at the tackle position. Mitchell Schwartz turns 31 in June. Eric Fisher turns 30 after the 2020 regular season. So you had to eventually address the tackle position. This guy gives you that swing flexibility, that all-important swing flexibility, because he can play both sides of the line of scrimmage. On the offensive line. This is a kid. Here's a stat that Patrick Mahomes will love, especially knowing the elite defensive ends that come off of the left side of the defensive line, which would be the right side of the Chiefs' offensive line. Niang closed out his collegiate career at right tackle and didn't allow a sack in 2 straight seasons. That's a phenomenal stat. And you mentioned 2018, so of course that would include that Ohio State game where he went against Chase Young and Bosa. This is a stud. Right. It's a tremendous value pick for the 96th player overall in the 3rd round. It was a home run. I would have loved for them to get Robert Hunt out of Louisiana Lafayette, but he went a lot earlier. But this is a great plan B.
Okay, 2 of their next 3 picks, or 2 of their final 3 picks, they did go secondary with Sneed, L'Jarius Sneed, the safety from La Tech, and then that was in the 4th round. And then they traded with Tennessee to have a final pick in the 7th round, and they picked up BoPete Keyes from Tulane. Just touch on those 2 guys, and those were need picks. What stands out about those 2?
What stands out most about this point here is Brett Veach, and I'm going to go back to the week before the draft where he kept, remember, there were 3 positions that he identified as being deep this year. And cornerback, he listed cornerback, wide receiver, and offensive line. This shows you just how deep the draft was. There was a need for cornerback, and I even distinctly thinking in the 2nd round, Jalen Johnson out of Utah or even Christian Fulton out of LSU would make perfect sense in that round, or maybe even a trade up in the 2nd round when there was that run on cornerbacks. But kudos to the Chiefs for being patient here and staying true to their draft board because they got 2 phenomenal players. Sneed out of Louisiana Tech, 4.37 speed. I think when you look at their defensive players, there's a key. There's a theme here. These guys can fly. He's 6 foot, 192 pounds. Exceptional size there. He loves to tackle. You can't go wrong with that because normally when you think of cornerbacks, these are the guys that shy away from contact, but you're not going to have that issue here with Sneed. He played safety his final year at Louisiana Tech, but before that he was a cornerback. And Chiefs area scout Willie Davis said after the pick that he thinks his natural position is corner. Sneed even said, my natural position is corner. But by playing safety, he was able to pick up the football smarts of how the action unfolds in front of him. You got a versatile guy here, and then if anything that we've learned just from this last year, what Steve Spagnuolo loves about defensive backs, he loves those guys who can move around. They can play outside. They can play inside of the slot. They can drop back into the safety like we used Kendall Fuller. So this is a guy I see who can fill all those roles. When you talk about talk about Keyes and the advantage of drafting him, trading to get into the 7th round at number 2. I think it was 237 overall, instead of waiting until the draft was over and signing him as a rookie free agent. Yeah, and Keyes was a guy that the Chiefs clearly had their eye on, and as the 7th round unfolded, 7th round is typically when personnel staff who aren't directly involved with what's going on the draft board, that's when they start making their phone calls to people who they project to be undrafted free agents. The Chiefs felt like this guy was not going to be available to them in free agency. They also felt like they didn't want to get involved in the bidding war because clearly they weren't the only ones who liked BoPete Keyes. 6'1", 202 pounds, another good tackler. They see this guy as probably a developmental type player, but someone who could help out immediately on special teams, and they need that too because the Chiefs lost safety Jordan Lucas to free agency, who Lucas signed with the Chicago Bears. He also fills depth in the secondary. This is just a solid move. And when you go back and look at this kid, when you watch the highlights, it's hard to ignore. He's all over the field. And this was a pick that the Chiefs absolutely felt like they had to go back into the 7th round. They didn't give up that much. All they gave up was a 2021 6th-round pick. And that's phenomenal value to get a guy that they want.
Okay, and the only draftee who did not get an A from you, an A or an A minus, was Mike Danna, the edge rusher from Michigan. Spent his final year at Michigan after spending his first four seasons, three on the field at Central Michigan. You gave the pick a C. I've seen some other national pundits who said that was the worst of the Chiefs picks. So break him down and why why did the Chiefs go there for him in round 5?
When you talk to the area scout and then when you see some of the stuff that's written about Mike Danna, he's viewed as a developmental guy. And there's nothing wrong with developmental players in the 5th, 6th, 7th round. There's still some depth there, but it's like I don't know what the clear vision is for him. He's not going to get any playing time over Frank Clark. He's not going to unseat Alex Okafor on the other side there. Exactly where does he fit in the scheme? He also doesn't seem to me like a guy that is an ideal fit for Steve Spagnuolo, what he likes to do. Now, starting off, can he be a rotational guy? That's probably where he's going to have to develop into because I don't see this guy coming in immediately and starting. He'll have to battle because there's a lot of good players in front of him currently on the Chiefs roster. But, he might be able to have to carve out a niche on special teams initially, and that's perfectly fine because, as we all know, for young rookies, the perfect place to develop is on special teams because you are able to play fast. This is a kid who transferred from Central Michigan and then ended up at Michigan, and now he's with the Chiefs. So we'll have to see how this plays out with him.
Okay. Hey, and so the Chiefs signed 18, free agents after the draft. Any of those names stand out to you? Anything? I the Missouri kid on here, but who? Any names that people should remember from this group?
The guy that I really like out of this group is Darrell Williams out of Mississippi State. Okay, his nickname in college was the General. I love that. The reason why I love that pick is because he can play center and guard. And Austin Ryder is in the final year of his contract, the current Chiefs starting center. And Darrell Williams will have an opportunity here to really jump in there and probably carve out a niche. The other person I like, too, is Southern Methodist safety Rodney Clemens. When you go back and watch his highlights, this guy is a heat-seeking missile. He is not afraid to put his nose in there and just knock somebody out with a bone-crushing hit. He had a horrible combine, and that's what probably hurt his draft stock. But as most people like to say, the tape don't lie. And then when you watch tape of SMU, he's all over the field.
Okay, and then the Missouri player I mentioned earlier, tackle Yasser Durant. So at least one local. There's a Missouri S&T player in here too, Tershawn Wharton, a defensive tackle. So a couple of Missouri players. All right, so Herbie, you gave the overall Chiefs effort in the draft an A minus, and you're right. It's not for 3 or 4 years that we know the true value of a class. Most of the classes in the Andy Reid era have been obviously above it, pretty good. They've been in the playoffs for all but one of the 7 years, and now 2 AFC title games and the Super Bowl championship. I'd say that they've done a pretty good job acquiring personnel over the years. So, all right, Herbie, great catching up with you, and we'll talk again soon.
All right, thanks so much, Blair.
Hey, it's Blair. We have a special subscription offer for SportsBeat KC listeners, unlimited digital access to the Kansas City Star's award-winning sports coverage. Sign up now for 1 year of Sports Pass for access to all the sports news, features, and columns presented on the kansascity.com site and it's only $30. That's a 40% savings off our regular rate. Your subscription will automatically renew after the initial term at $50 unless you tell us to cancel. Your subscription helps support the sports coverage of KansasCity.com and the Kansas City Star, and that support has never been more important. Please visit KansasCity.com/SportsBeat KC offer to get this special offer. And as always, thanks for listening.
I appreciate you guys for joining to kind of go back and review the last 3 days. Certainly, we're excited about how this draft unfolded. Huge tip of the cap to my personnel staff. We stayed aggressive all weekend long, even though we didn't do trades in the first 2 days. But you guys knew I had to sneak one in there at the end. But our guys did a great job. Really excited about our draft class, and I really think that our guys hit a home run after the draft. I mean, some of these guys that we were able to land in free agency were guys that we're considering in the 5th round there. So a lot of these guys that were on the board for that final pick, we ended up staying aggressive and being able to sign after the draft. So again, really excited about the future of the Kansas City Chiefs and looking forward to personally welcome these guys once they get here. But again, can't thank my personnel staff enough for their hard work. And with that, I'll open up the questions.
Go ahead, Adam.
Hey, Brett. Looking at Willie Gay and the 2 DBs you drafted yesterday, and particularly Snead, real fast guys, obviously. Is that because you guys needed to upgrade your speed at those positions, or is that how those positions are played nowadays?
Well, it's certainly how those positions are played nowadays. I mean, when you have guys that test extremely well and perform at the combines or if they had pro days, those guys are certainly going to be, if you didn't like them on tape, those are the guys that are going to get second and third looks just because of their athletic attributes. But guys like Willie Gay and their performances on tape, you get even more excited. And those are guys that, we certainly want to target, guys that certainly run and test well, but they're not just testers. They're football players that test well, not testers that play football.
Let's go to Pete Sweeney. Go ahead, Pete.
Hey, Brett. Congratulations on the draft, of everything being over and so on and so forth. I had a question now moving forward. I think it's the number one question on fans' minds when it comes to Pat and Chris Jones. So just wondering where you are there and what's your confidence level that this stuff can be taken care of by the time reconvening happens. We assume that'll be training camp.
I don't know if you can hear me buzzed out a little there, Pete, but I think your question was about just moving forward with Pat and Chris.
And confidence level that this will be taken care of by the time everyone potentially reconvenes for what would be, we assume, training camp.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to think that we're fairly confident, and we have a lot of time. I mean, these when you're dealing with players of this magnitude, these contracts are certainly on the cornerstones in this organization. We do have, and now that the draft is over, and free agency period here with this pandemic and the virtual draft, certainly there was a lot of additional in the draft. But now that this is behind us here, and we have a window now that we can kind of reset as an organization, get together, we have a lot of time, and this will be the focus on where we are to make sure we get these guys locked up and head into training camp whenever that is, ready to rock and roll. So again, you can never put a definitive answer on anything, but we're certainly hopeful and we're confident, and we're going to put a lot of work from now until the start of camp.
Okay, Herbie, let's go to Herbie. Go ahead.
Hey, Brett, good afternoon. Congratulations on the draft, man.
Thank you, Herbie. Thank you.
Hey, specific to your 2 defensive backs that you grabbed on day 3, what is it you liked about them, and are you happy with what you came out of there? And obviously trading back into the 7th round, what was it about Keyes that you liked, that you had to go back into the 7th round to get them?
Well, we like guys, certainly in our scheme, guys that have some size and length that can run, bigger, longer press-type corners. We like both player size and the physicality. Snead was a guy that when Saturday started, that was our guy. I mean, if we had the first pick in round 4, it would have been Snead. So we were certainly holding our breath there, and our guys did a good job of helping me be patient and work through this, because being patient and letting the board play itself out and getting Sneed there at the bottom of 4 certainly enabled us to use the other equity to go up and get Keyes. Keyes was an interesting guy too. There were 2 bigger corners that we liked as press guys on the outside, and when we got to that 5th round, we were kind of going back and forth between Keyes and Danna. And once we got off the clock and selected Danna, our guys did a great job of reorganizing the board. And I had mentioned earlier that, the value of not having a 6 and 7 would be to really assess the board. And once the draft ends, to attack it. And once the board started to unfold after we were off the clock for the day, I think you start to look at the corner stack and understand that with so many picks left in the draft, the odds of this guy getting selected here is very high. So let's just see what we can do and get back up there while those guys continue to monitor who was being drafted and where we're going to allocate our resources. So those guys worked on that, and then I was able to, call through and get some teams and got a hold of John Robinson at Tennessee, and we went back up and got the guy that we almost took in 5. So we were excited about that.
Let's go to Seren. Go ahead, Seren.
Brett, can you talk a little bit more about making that move? Is that a combination of, your advanced work you do on the 21 draft and you look at it and say, okay, it's not a corner class next year, or it's just a weak class? How accurate can you be when you try to gauge what you were giving up ultimately by trading a future draft pick?
You buzzed out a little there. I think your question was, how much did it involve? You buzzed out a little, Seren?
Yeah, I'll repeat it. So how accurate can you be looking ahead to the 21 draft? Like when you obviously you're kind of taking a loan out against the 21 draft, and can you look at it and say, hey, we don't like the corners with any accuracy, that the 21 corners aren't good, the 21 draft class isn't good, and is that part of what guides you down what you ended up doing?
Yeah, I don't know if you can sit there and the whole depth of the corner class mixture. Certainly you'll know some guys early on, but I mean, to your point, I mean, that is a good point, that you can't sit there and accurately detail what corners would have been there in 5 or 6 next year. What I can say is that we felt like this kid was a 5th or 6th round pick. We're potentially looking at compensatory picks in 4 and 5, and then we're all hoping that pick is 632. So if that pick is 632, when you add in the compensatory picks in rounds 3, 4, and 5, you're looking at a 7th round value. If that's a 7th round value and you're swapping a 7th round value this year for a guy that we felt was really on our board right there at that Danna selection, we kind of looked at it like that. Compensatory picks. Hopefully our pick is late in the 6th round, right? 632. If you add in the compensatory picks in rounds 3, 4, and 5, well, now you're looking at you're really into the 7th round when you talk about total volume of numbers. And for where this kid was ranked this year, to your point, we don't know exactly what would be there next year, but we also don't know if there'll be someone that we had graded so high. So we felt the risk was worth the reward, and we were very confident that Keyes would have been drafted. In fact, his agent texted me with a text message from another team. I won't say the team, but he was going to go, I think, 4 or 5 picks later. So we like him. I mean, none of this is a guarantee, and the more great players you have, the more likely you are to have success with these guys. But we certainly liked them, and we felt that made sense when you factor in potential compensatory picks next year, and hopefully, again, the 6th round pick being later in the process there.
Okay, let's go to Nate Taylor. Go ahead, Nate.
Hey, Brett, thanks for doing this. Hope you got a little bit of sleep, like all of us. I wanted to go back and discuss some of the offensive linemen that are joining the team. Obviously, there's Niang with a 3rd round pick. Just what did you like about him? I mean, everything I read, he appears to be a pretty intelligent player. Just what did you learn about him from a personality standpoint throughout this process? And then 2 guys from a UDFA standpoint, Durant and Darrell Williams. You've given them some of that priority tag in terms of, free agents guys. With those 3 players and the understanding of wanting to protect Pat in the future, just what did you like about, obviously, Durant and Williams, and what did you really enjoy learning about Niang in the draft process?
Well, we were hoping we can get someone that was fluent in French so that we can pair him with Larry up front. So I think that was important for us. He needed a wingmate there. So the fact that he's fluent in French is a big deal. But he's a smart kid, and he picks up the game extremely fast, potentially not having rookie mini camps or OTAs and then jumping into this thing is going to be a challenge for young guys, really on both sides of the football. So I think the fact that this kid come in here, he has a high football IQ and he's extremely versatile is going to be something that will help us get him up to speed quickly. The kid's a very interesting player. I mean, he's got some really good tape. I think you guys all on this chat, I know you guys do a bunch of tape work, but I think there was an 18 game when they played Ohio State. I think you guys can see him go against Chase Young and Bosa, and I think Chase Young kind of mentioned out there that he didn't have a great day versus Lucas. So there's talent there, and we also feel like there's a lot of versatility in regards to his ability to play guard. Feel the same way about Durant from Missouri, certainly a local guy we have to watch a lot, played a bunch of tackle, but we do think that sliding into guard might be his best position there. So anytime you can get a couple of 6'6" guys inside there protecting Pat will be beneficial. And then with Darrell, he's a guy extremely effective player at Mississippi State. That's a guy we feel like has center and guard flexibility. He's done both there at Mississippi State. And as I mentioned to Willie on our conference call the other day, we've had a lot of success with Mississippi State players. These schools, it's funny when you just go back and take a step back and look at some schools that seem to or tend to produce a lot of players. Man, Mississippi State seems like every year when they go to the NFL, I don't have numbers in front of me. I don't have statistics. Just my overall impression of when I think of players that end up getting drafted from Mississippi State, these guys always tend to work out. So we're hopefully Darrell's falls in that line and is able to crack our roster and help us compete in the next season.
Okay, let's go to Matt and Derek.
Hey, Brad, hope you recover from the weekend okay.
Yeah.
A couple of the guys you took, especially, Willie Gay was a guy that, you talked about that, he could have gone higher up in the draft. Maybe there hadn't been maybe some of the red flags. And Willie talked yesterday about Keyes maybe going higher if, he had tested at the combine. How much of when you look at players like that, you look at it as from a value standpoint, that if you've got a, 5th round pick, that you're getting a guy that maybe you think has 2nd or 3rd round value, rather, despite the fact there might be questions, rather than maybe going for somebody who, maybe doesn't have as much upside, but maybe more guarantee.
Well, I mean, listen, I think we're always looking, it's a projection business that we're in. We're always looking at guys that, to your point, there are guys that you feel maybe have maximized their athletic abilities. And but at the same time, you're not going to sacrifice the ability to come in and have a long career. I mean, there are some guys that we always consider make it guys just because of the way they're wired. So you're always going to look at the athletic ceiling of a player because these are young guys, and you always say to yourself, where do you see this guy certainly in 2, 3, 4 years? Has he maxed out athletically? Is there more to get out of him? So there's that balance of, wanting to take this player to the next level in regards to where he can be as a player on the field. There's also some guys that they've never shown the degree to, improve their game. So they've always been talented, but their career has always kind of just been even keel. So you certainly look for the guys that have an athletic ceiling that have shown signs that they can progress and get to where you think they need to be successful at this level.
All right, let's go to Harold Kuntz. Go ahead, Harold. There we go. Try that, Harold. Go ahead.
Got it. All right. I thought you were in control, but hey, Brett, thanks for doing this. I just want to know what the confidence level with your conversation with these guys without rookie mini camps and potentially OTAs, what your confidence level these guys can get on the field quickly and kind of be able to contribute immediately with the ones that you kind of specifically point out, players that you knew they could be put in a position where they could study in OTAs and everything virtually and then get on the field and be able to contribute immediately.
Well, listen, we're very fortunate to have, this is where, it's always an advantage to have a great coaching staff. But, when you have a coaching staff that has been together for so long, this is where I think this will really help. Our coaching staff has been together, in particular the offensive side, for such a long time now where, the ability to communicate on different levels from guys who have been here and guys that are just getting here will be important. But, we'll put a lot of that burden on our coaching staff, and thankfully we have a great one. But as you mentioned, it's going to come back to these kids and understanding the environment that we live in and putting them back on them to make sure that wherever they need to be before they get here, when camp starts, they have to make sure that they're prepared because they potentially won't have a rookie mini camp or an OTA. So I guess we won't know, until we get there. As far as my confident level, I'd like to think that I'm confident because we've done a lot of work on these guys, and we know that these guys love the game and love to prepare. We've never gone through something like this, so I don't know if I can put a percentage on it, other than we'll just we'll trust the process that we utilize to acquire these players, and we'll certainly trust the process of our coaching staffs.
Okay, let's go to Vahe. Vahe, can you hear us?
I can. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep. Go ahead.
Hey, Brett. This is sort of a bigger picture question, but I wonder if you could just speak to the idea of how different your job does or doesn't feel this time of year, this year, than it did last year, when now you're the defending Super Bowl champions. And I just wonder what that's done for how you look at things in any way, and maybe also how you might assess what that's done for your general hunger, how much it makes you hungry for more, et cetera.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that it's one of those things where I think when you are envisioning winning a Super Bowl, I think in the back of your mind, you're like, well, once we get one, we can maybe alter our approach and take a step back. But to your other point, though, once you get there and you know how tough it is, I think you realize that if you really want to stay on top, you have to be – it's that fine line between being aggressive, because that's what got you here. Some of the moves we made and some of the things we were able to go out and do, I mean, they were obviously considered aggressive, but we know that that's what got us the first Super Bowl in 50 years. And if we weren't aggressive, we wouldn't have been here potentially. But there's that balance of not being, being smart and not – and understanding that you need future assets to maintain depth. It is a battle of attrition. We lost all those defensive linemen last year. Our quarterback got hurt. Our wideouts got hurt. So if you don't have a bunch of draft picks and if you don't have cap flexibility, you're going to be in trouble because you're just not going to have the numbers. So it's that fine line. It's staying aggressive, but then being decisive and being selective when you want to be aggressive, but also having, having that flexibility when you want to pull the trigger. But it's the selective aggressiveness, I think, that you realize is what works best, I think, moving forward.
That'll do it for today. Thanks for lending us your ears, and thanks to the production crew of Derek Donovan, Savannah Smith, Randy Mason, Beth Welsh, Jeff Rosen, and Chris Fickett. Cap tip to Herbie Teope. Links to the stories we discussed can be found in the show notes. We'll be back on Tuesday for another SportsBeat KC, where we talk sports in Kansas City every day.